So I just wanted to show you that document. What we are going to be talking about and sort of learning about is trauma, and in particular, little children. So who knows a lot about trauma? Just a quick look. Okay. Yeah, researching about trauma. Okay, it's just good to gauge where everyone's at, because I know a bit about trauma, but in terms of the sciencey stuff, in terms of brain chemistry, probably not. I'm not the best at that. But we'll do our best together. Okay, so what is trauma? All right, traumatic events are common, and most people will experience at least one during their lives. Okay, so your entire lifespan, everyone in this room is going to experience one form of trauma or another. Okay, so it could be. What are some examples of trauma that we can think of? Don't think of anything too scary. Yeah, parents that abuse drugs, starting strong. Anybody else? Anybody been? Yep. Car crash, exactly. Car accident. Death of a really close family member, death of a pet. Perhaps you've had an accident where you've had boiling water spilt on you in the kitchen. All right, or anything. Okay, anything can be a traumatic event depending on you as a person. All right, but most people will recover with the help of family and friends, and there are effective treatments for those who need extra support. So, little video. I love videos. I'm going to watch the video because it explains trauma really well, better than I can. All right, sound up. Can you hear it?
There are moments in life that test us. They challenge our understanding of the world and our sense of safety. Natural disasters, accidents, violence. These events can come from nowhere, or they may have always been part of our life. Trauma comes in many forms. It affects thousands of Australians every day, people from all walks of life. The ripple effects of trauma impact everyone. After a traumatic event, the world can feel unpredictable and unsafe. For most people, this feeling passes with time, and with support from loved ones, life goes back to normal. It's hard to get back on your feet. Fear, sadness, guilt, and anger are all common reactions. But when they continue for too long, they can leave you feeling helpless and exhausted. Distressing memories, images, or sounds may replay over and over in your mind. The effects of trauma start to creep into everyday life, affecting relationships. You may even pull away from important relationship activities. You may have trouble getting a good night's sleep, and sometimes it can be tempting to reach for alcohol or other drugs. Like you're making any progress, and you don't know how to get off. You're left feeling overwhelmed and trapped, and your family and friends feel helpless. But there is a way out. Effective treatments and support are available from professionals who understand trauma. You can get your life back. For information, visit phoenixaustralia.org.
Sorry. I just to make sure nobody. Okay, there's Caleb. Right. Okay. Go back to normal. Okay, so what were some key points that we picked up from that video? Key points. Shoot. What's trauma? What were some extra examples in that video that we saw? Coronavirus could potentially be traumatic, absolutely. All right. What were some things that we learnt from the video that people find difficult with trauma? Okay, what sort of aspects of their life can it impact? Relationships. Yeah, and it can creep in. What's bad habits? Absolutely, addictive sorts of habits as well. Okay, what can help people get out of their slumps? Help people get out of their slumps. professional support? Absolutely. Okay, so we're going to go into all this a little bit more. So the immediate and long-term consequences of children's exposure to a traumatic experience are multifaceted, which means there can be a variety of long-term consequences. Okay, no person's trauma is the same. No person's symptoms are the same. Everybody and every child is going to be different. Okay, because we do need to look more at children. So there are lots of different things in a child's life that will impact how they are affected by their particular trauma. Okay, so looking at complex trauma can result in a loss of core capacities for self-regulation and interpersonal relatedness. So self-regulation, being able to regulate your emotions, being able to maintain a healthy mental state or a good well-being, not letting difficult situations overwhelm you. All right, and the capacity to establish like mature, reciprocal and satisfying interpersonal relationships. For children, perhaps it'll impact their ability to develop this. So you wouldn't expect a child to have a mature relationship, all right? But a traumatic event at a young age could impact their ability to build relationships, impact the connectedness they can have and develop with other people. All right, children exposed to trauma often experience lifelong problems that place them at risk of additional trauma, psychiatric and addictive disorders, chronic mental illness, or vocational, legal and family problems. These could extend through childhood, adolescence and adulthood. So really we're looking at trauma at a young age can have a lifelong impact if it's not, I guess, not necessarily treated, or probably the word we're looking for is resolved. Okay, sometimes trauma needs to be treated, but other times it's just resolved. All right, and we'll look into how you can resolve trauma. All right, so looking at what traumatic events can be, any event that involves experience or witnessing a threat of death. Okay, so that could be animals as well, it doesn't have to be people. All right, serious injury, that's supposed to be sexual violence, and all of those things have potential to be traumatic. Almost everyone who experiences trauma will be emotionally affected, and it may differ for lots of different people. Okay, so any traumatic event is going to have a response. We don't know how much it's going to affect a particular child. All right, so other examples, being in an accident, which Sarah said, being physically assaulted in any way, witnessing physical assault in any way if somebody's looking at domestic violence. Okay, being involved in a way in military operations, so maybe not necessarily in Australia, but we might look at children that are living in more poorer countries that have a really strong military presence, and they might see some really negative things in their young life. Being involved in a natural disaster, such as a bushfire, flood or cyclone, can have some long effects. So that's talking about a child's sense of safety, right? Their sense of security. They can't predict anything about what's going to happen in their world because this massive natural disaster's happened that they didn't expect, and everything that they know has been tipped upside down. All right. So when something traumatic happens, it can be overwhelming. It can be hard to come to terms with what's happened. It can mean that someone begins to question the things that they've already known, so that their life is upside down. They can't really predict what's going to happen. They no longer believe that the world is a safe place, or they're no longer in control of what's happened, okay? So it can be deeply unstabilizing, in particularly for a child, all right, and for their sense of safety. For children, it can contribute to shaping the way children see their world and the relationships that they have. So probably looking at relationships within their families, if there's any traumatic events that have happened there. This can have a long-lasting impact on their sense of self, on their development of their own identity, okay? So in terms of a child's identity being developed, who might have a guess of how a traumatic event could impact their identity, their sense of self? Sure, sexual assault could be something that could be really horrible for a child, that might impact on their sense of identity. But looking at their sense of self or their identity, it could be things like, I'm an important person. Yeah, bullying is definitely a traumatic event. All right, but in terms of impacting their sense of self, they might not see themselves as an important person. They might not see themselves to have any personal worth. you know, it's not going to be worth telling anybody because nobody's going to care because I'm not important, or perhaps yeah, all those sorts of things. All right. Yeah, we move on. Children and adolescents can experience a range of problems after a traumatic event. So who's heard of PTSD? What PTSD is? Good. I only learned that a few years ago. All right, no, I'm joking. PTSD includes 4 main types of difficulties, okay? So these are the types of things that children and people can experience after a traumatic event. So I've highlighted them for us. So first one is relieving the trauma. Oh, that's not meant to happen. Reliving the trauma through repetitive play. So children might actually play out what's happened over and over again, okay? Quite commonly when there are sorts of sexual assault instances, children are very young, naive, and they're trying to understand what's happened to them. So they might try and react that with some other children to make sense of what's happening to them. All right, so that's repetitive play. They might have some frightening dreams or distress when reminded of the event. So it could be perhaps on the news if we're looking at a natural disaster. Maybe again with repetitive play, they might be playing out an ambulance coming to a crash site and all the different things that are happening during that time. Okay, so they're reliving them up. All right. They might avoid reminders of the event, so they might avoid certain people, they might avoid certain places or activities, and thoughts or feelings might bring memories back. So think of a really young child that's trying to avoid people, places, or activity. What sorts of behaviour would you expect from a young child that's trying to avoid something they don't want to do? A child that perhaps doesn't want to go to bed, because what might you do? Make up lies. You might try to do other things over and over again. Be sneaky. Okay, some parents might see that behaviour. What behaviour would we normally call that behaviour? It's naughty behaviour. I don't know what to do with my child. They're so naughty all the time. They're lying to me constantly. They never want to do this. They never want to do that. All right, you might just think they're a really bratty kid, but perhaps they are avoiding a traumatic event that maybe a parent might not think was a traumatic event. Maybe we don't know about the traumatic event. Okay, so keep in mind that children do display certain behaviours after a traumatic event. They have negative thoughts and moods such as fear, guilt, sadness, shame, confusion, a loss of interest in certain activities that are related to trauma. It could be even a sports activity that their friend maybe had a really serious injury, or perhaps they were, what's like a movie that I watched where I think it was Blades of Glory. Has anyone seen Blades of Glory? Yeah, you know how there's a character in that who she's the younger sister and she stops ice skating because her parent died in a car crash on the ice skating. Right, that's the situation. All right, that they might have negative thoughts and moods about and they've stopped doing that activity. All right, because they're avoiding that trauma. All right, so that's when she was a child in that particular movie, or they might spend some more time alone. Okay, so there's a couple of things children can do. Or they might have feelings of anxiety, so having trouble sleeping or concentrating. So this could be in a classroom, at home. They could be feeling angry or irritable. What are some irritable? Some people are looking at other behavioural sorts of things. Irritability. Some people might see as like ADHD, all right? But it's really important that you look at all of the different things that why a child is being irritable or having temper tantrums, being easily startled or constantly on the lookout, being in that fight or flight, all right, or doing things that might be risky or dangerous. Okay, so these are some things, some ways that children might particularly might respond. Okay. I think we talked about a lot of that. So the support of family and friends is particularly important during this time, even if a child doesn't have, say, close relationships with close family members, maybe they're in foster care. Who else might a child be able to go to for support? Teachers, caregiver, friends. All right, lots of, maybe if they are in a school and they've got friends, they're a little bit older and they don't feel comfortable going by themselves to tell an adult. There are some other people, but often those sorts of children are at a little bit more risk of traumatic events because they don't have that tight-knit support that maybe a child might have. Children exposed to a traumatic event that cannot cope or be resilient can meet diagnostic criteria for certain mental disorders. So there is a bit of a diagnosis scale that children can go on to determine what sorts of symptoms they're having. All right, so these can be perhaps not at a young age, but they can develop as the child gets older. Depression. Little kids can be depressed, okay, because depression is about the brain chemistry, all right? It's about the hormones in the brain that are released. Okay, so if there is a traumatic event, it can set off those hormones in your brain. So your happy hormones can actually start producing less, and your unhappy hormones, that's how I'm going to call them, all right, they can start producing more, and there can be an imbalance, all right? So young children can develop depression. Attention deficit disorder, so ADHD, oppositional defiant disorder, so constantly having those tantrums, all right, because it might be a coping mechanism that a child develops, so that defiant behaviour, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that, you know, being bratty is something that they could see as a coping disorder. It might work for that child. They will learn that behaving in that particular way is going to prevent them from being put into that place or that situation. So they might see that as a way of getting out of anything. Right? They might develop anxiety. They might have separation anxiety. They might have eating disorders, sleep disorders, or communication disorders. So they might actually stop talking or talk a lot less. They might develop some real shyness. Okay, so a lot of these things can actually be measured with some diagnostic tools. All right, and another great video. So this is an American guy, I'm not sure, but he talks about some of the ways that we can help young people in trauma that have experienced traumatic events. I think he looks at it more of a teacher's perspective, but it's good to sort of just take some mental notes through this video of some ways you can help a child that's struggling through it, a traumatic. Make sure.
I'm David Trickey. I'm a consulting clinical psychologist. I work here at the Unemployed National Centre for Children and Families, and I work within the Specialist Trauma Maltreatment Service. So I'm here to talk about traumatic events and how traumatic events affect children and young people, but most importantly, what the adults around them can do to help decrease the impact of those events. Now, the main difference between a difficult or stressful event and a traumatic one is how long the reaction lasts. So lots of events might be difficult or stressful and people might be upset for a short while. But with a traumatic event, that impact lasts much longer. So it starts to colour the way you see everything. So instead of just that one event being frightening, suddenly everything becomes frightening. And then the memories last much longer. So the traumatic memories are different to normal memories. They're much more intrusive. They're stored in terms of the sights, smells, tastes, and touches. And when they come into mind, it's not that you're remembering an event. It feels as if you're actually experiencing the thing in real time. So when we think about what school staff can do to help traumatized children, there's some really, really crucial things they can do. First thing they can do is to help the child to feel safe. Often children will feel safe by structure and routine and familiarity. And to be honest, school staff are really uniquely well placed to provide those things for the young person. Second thing they can do is help them to calm down. They already know the children and young people. They may know what can be helpful to help them to calm themselves down and not stay hyper-aroused. Next thing they can do is provide them opportunities to socialise, to feel connected to other people. We know how important social support is following traumatic events, and schools are really well placed to provide that social support. The next thing they can do is provide the young person with the opportunity to feel they have some control. Sometimes traumatic events take away that sense of control, and schools, again, are really well placed to give that young person some control back so they can make choices about certain things. And things school staff can do to help children and young people to feel hopeful about the future. So not just focusing on the catastrophic impact of the event, but to try and find some glimmers of hope and to have a sort of future-oriented perspective. What are they hoping to do with their lives despite the things that have happened to them? And the last thing schools do is provide the opportunity to talk about the event. So one of the big difficulties with traumatic events is people are too afraid to talk about it. They're too afraid the impact will have on other people, and they end up being left with it rattling around inside their heads. Schools are well placed to allow the child to talk it through as and when they're ready to do so, and that really helps them to put the event behind them. If you need any more information, you go to the Schools in Mind pages of the Anna Freud website and join the Schools in Mind network for the resources.
Nah. All right. So, oh no, I want to go back. Okay. So, what makes a traumatic event a traumatic event? I'll catch that right at the beginning. Yeah. Absolutely. How so what are some of those effects that we just talked about? What are some of those things that could happen after a traumatic event? How would a child relive their trauma? Dreams, they might have memories, flashbacks. Right? Memories can be triggered through sounds, smells, sights. Right? A memory. What did that guy say about traumatic events? How are they stored in the brain? Stored in the brain that have a lot of importance. All right, the brain really, as much as we try to reject negative to us about them, sometimes traumatic events are actually stored in our brain as a protective mechanism to avoid going into those situations again. Okay, so how long will those effects last? So what are some other things that children might Alright, I might have trouble sleeping. Perhaps they've had a traumatic event, they've had a grandparent pass away and they haven't been able to sleep for a week. Alright, if it continues for a month, 2 months, alright, it then falls into that traumatic event because they're experiencing long-lasting symptoms. What else could happen? Uneasy, alright, on edge, anxious, constantly feeling like shaking, like you're on the move, if anything's going to come and throw something at you, you're ready to go, you're at that fight or flight. What else? You might have, you might have behaviour issues. Right, constantly throwing to a tantrum. All right, so what makes it a traumatic event is not necessarily the event itself, all right, but how a child responds to it and how long the effects last for. Okay, so that's the difference. It might still, having a grandparent pass away might still be a traumatic event, all right, but for a child that might have experienced loss before or has an education about perhaps their grandparent was sick for a very long time and the parents knew that their grandparent was going to pass away, so they started reading stories to their child about grandparents passing away and going to a place afterwards and that it's actually okay. Those sorts of situations might help a child get through that event easier and not have long-lasting effects in comparison to a child that's never experienced or heard of or learned about loss and grief before. Does that sort of make sense? Right. Okay, so what can adults do? I know that video really looked at a school sort of perspective, but there were some really great tips and tricks of what adults can do to help support children get past a traumatic event. So a child feels safe. Let's look. Okay. How did do you remember any ways that he said you can help children feel safe? No, come back. Do you have something? Yeah. Okay. So and that would be sort of talking about. We're looking at more of an after trauma situation. You would offer opportunities to talk about the situation. If you are in a classroom environment and perhaps one of the children is learning about loss and grief or something like that, or maybe a dog or something like that, you might have the whole class read the same story and have other children in the classroom talk about perhaps their pets that might have passed away, and other children can then connect with each other about something that they're both experiencing. All right. So going back to making a child feel safe, we looked at structure. Remember what we said about structure. Did it mention that? So now that we've sort of got an insight to what information I'm looking for, I want to put the video on again. And I said take some mental notes. If you want to take some actual notes, that might be good. But take some mental notes of what makes it a traumatic event and what can adults do. Okay, try to come up with some extra things that we haven't talked about.
I'm a consultant clinical psychologist. I work here at the Anna National Centre for Children and Families, and I work within the Specialist Trauma and Maltreatment Service. So I'm here to talk about traumatic events and how traumatic events affect children and young people, but most importantly, what the adults around them can do to help decrease the impact of those events. And the main difference between a difficult or stressful event and a traumatic one is how long the reaction lasts. So lots of events might be difficult or stressful, and people might be upset for a short while. But with a traumatic event, that effect, that impact lasts much longer. So it starts to colour the way you see everything. So instead of just that one event being frightening, suddenly everything becomes frightening. And the memories last much longer. So the traumatic memories are different to normal memories. They're much more intrusive. They're stored in terms of the sights, smells, tastes, and touches. And when they come into mind, it's not that you're remembering an event, it feels as if you're actually re-experiencing the thing in real time. So when we think about what school staff can do to help traumatized children, there are some really, really crucial things they can do. The first thing they can do is to help the child to feel safe. Often children will feel safe by structure and routine and familiarity. And to be honest, school staff are really uniquely well placed to provide those things for the young person. Second thing they can do is to help them to calm down. They already know the children and young people. They may know what can be helpful to help them to calm themselves down and not stay hyper aroused. The next thing they can do is provide them opportunities to socialize, to feel connected to other people. We know how important social is following traumatic events, and schools are really well placed to provide that social support. The next thing they can do is provide the young person the opportunity to feel they have some control. Sometimes traumatic events take away that sense of control, and schools, again, are really well placed to give that young person some control back so they can make choices about certain things. And the last thing school staff can do is to help children and young people to feel hopeful about the future. So not just focusing on the catastrophic impact of the events, but to try and find some glimmers of hope and to have a sort of future-oriented perspective. What are they hoping to do with their lives despite the things that have happened to them? And then the last thing schools can do is provide the opportunity to talk about the event. So one of the big difficulties with traumatic events is people are too afraid to talk about it, or they're too afraid the impact will have on other people, and they end up being left with it rattling around inside their heads. Schools are well placed to allow the child to talk it through as and when they're ready to do so. And that really helps them to put the event behind them. Now, if you need any more information, you can go to the schools and my pages at the end.
Extra stuff. Of every aspect of their life, but what are some situations that we could provide control to a young child? What are some things we could give them control over? senses. Taste is the sense that maybe a child, I mean, it's a long shot, but maybe a child wants a specific type of food because it makes them feel really positive. Who has a type of food they love that makes them feel really good? Who has like a favorite food that always makes you feel good? I do. All right, so maybe a child has a favorite food. You want to give them control over having things that they enjoy that's going to make them feel good. What else, thanks guys, what else might you give a child control over? So let's stay on the control for a little bit. Yeah, sure, pointing. Sure, play activities. All right, maybe a book that they're going to read at the end of the day. So finding opportunities to give them some control is really important. What else did we pick up that we didn't get from that video? What else can we do? You're feeling hyper aroused, so really anxious, really on edge. What would you want to help a child do? You want to keep them calm. All right, calm a child. Yeah, okay. Hyper around. Good job. Or sensory toys. They've experienced a traumatic event such as a car crash that has really, really loud noises. Perhaps they're really sensitive to noise for a little while, and you might give them some headphones. Headphones are a sensory tool that adults can give to children because help them feel calm. All right, fidget toys, maybe teaching them some meditation. Primary school and having like not like nap times, but yeah. You guys remember having those sorts of yeah? So it's help kids calm down, in particular, yes, after recess if they were very hyperactive. Okay. Anything else that we picked up from that video? Okay. So these are things that you can just do in school. These are things that you can do at home as well. All right, which is partly what you'll be asked to do in your next assessment. Okay, so just want to check in with people that are at home. Are we following Jessie and Kaylee? Do we have any questions?
No.
It's all good?
Yeah.
Let's move on. Okay, so how can adults help? So children's reactions to trauma can often be misunderstood as naughty behaviour. Just talked about this, all right? Becoming angry or blaming the child for this behaviour can make things worse, right? Because you're also taking their control away again, okay? So perhaps that they are reacting in a bad way, okay, to share how they're feeling or they don't know how they're feeling. You're taking away their ability to respond to that trauma, and you're taking away their control again, okay, taking away their voice. Right, so you can reassure the child that he or she is safe and cared for. When they are ready, listen and talk to the child about the trauma. Children can become frightened about things that they don't fully understand, so they don't know how to talk about it, so they don't understand the situation. All right, or maybe they don't understand what's happened to them, but they might understand that it's wrong, or they don't want to get somebody in trouble. All right, maybe it's I don't know, a friend. It could be something that a friend stole something from the shops, and that can be really unsettling for a child and it festers inside of them. I don't know. All right, encourage expressions of emotions. These can be a part of the healing process. So not just looking at happy and sad, but maybe guilty, are you feeling nervous, you're feeling anxious, stuff like that. Helping them identify the different things that they're feeling. Enjoy activities together as a family and keep family roles clear, so that structure, okay? Now we're going to look a little bit at resilience. Okay, so who's heard of the word resilience before? All right, who can give me an example of what yeah, it's your ability to come back. It's your ability to, what do you say? It's that snapping back sort of reaction, okay? Your ability to bounce back from something that's happened. So resilience is general concept related to positive adaptation in the context of challenge. All right, so you're in a situation that you find challenging. It's your ability to get over that hump. Okay, resilience has broad and diverse meanings. Including recovery from traumatic experiences, overcoming disadvantage to succeed in life, and withstanding stress to function well in tasks of life. Okay, so resilience is important in regards to trauma. Okay, having resilience and strong resilience is going to help a child not necessarily get over trauma, but right. But having resilience or not having resilience before the traumatic event also has an effect on how much a child experiences trauma. Okay, I'm going to look at that a little bit more. So essentially, resilience refers to patterns of positive adaptation or development. Adaptation, that's a bunch of fancy words. So how well you can get up on your feet after falling down. Some children develop resilience through natural processes, while other children need help. So what are some examples of a young child developing resilience? Quite literally falling over. Oh no, I've got some brave sneeze, but I'm actually okay. I haven't broken any bones. I'm going to continue to play with my friends. All right, an example of a child that might not have resilience, that fell over and grazed their knee, might do what? Go seek help. All right, they might find it really hard to get over. Okay, so other children might need help because they haven't had opportunities to develop that resilience. All right. The early years hold great promise for interventions to prevent and reduce risk. So when the child is really young, making sure that they have opportunities to fall over and get back up. The first time a child falls over and hurts themselves, they're going to be really, really upset. The first couple of times they fall over and hurt themselves, they're going to be really, really upset. They're going to go to somebody that they seek for help and comfort, and that person is going to tell the child what? Okay, you're fine, you're actually not bleeding. I know it hurts now, but it's not going to hurt after a while. And if it's grazed hands, you know how mum and dad might grab your hands, see if it's better, might wash it. See, you've got to. You don't have an actually hurt yourself, all right? So after a while, after being a young child, they will learn that resilience, okay? There's things like emotional resilience as well. So perhaps being told no and being able to deal with that and get over that. Some children really struggle with the concept of no, all right? So, yeah, all right, so we talked about that, great. All right, so resilience research indicates that during early childhood, it's important for children to have good quality of care and opportunities for learning, right? Adequate nutrition and community support for families to facilitate positive development of social and regulation. All right, so you need lots of things to develop resilience. You need to be genuinely healthy, all right? If you're an unhealthy person, it might impact your ability to be physically resilient, okay? If you don't have opportunities to learn, all right? So maybe if you're only learning at school, but you don't have opportunities to learn at home because you don't live in a nurturing environment, it's going to impact your ability to be resilient, okay? If you have people in your life that maybe if parents are neglecting their child, or perhaps they haven't had opportunities to connect and create strong bonds, it's going to impact a child's ability to be resilient. So it's not just those opportunities, those falling over and getting back up opportunities that help children develop resilience. It's also the larger picture, their bubble, their tight little community that's around them, and the different aspects of their life that help them develop resilience. All right. Let's move on. I think there's a video somewhere. Yeah, all right. So this video is called Learning Brain versus Survival Brain. Okay, so let's have a guess at what the learning brain is. What do we think the learning brain is? Sure. What do we think the survival brain is? Sure. The learning brain is a child that hasn't, who isn't experiencing trauma. It's a child that has high levels of resilience. Okay, a child that can fall down and easily get back, a child that can experience a bad situation and can get back up. All right. The survival brain represents a child that has experienced a traumatic event and is struggling to get past these certain things. Okay, the traumatic effects are having a long last on them. All right, and we're going to have a look at how the impacts of trauma affects the two different children. All right, they're not little kids in the video; they are brains. But I think it's a good little explanation. All right, it looks at a child. It looks at a child who hasn't developed resilience, hasn't bounced back. All right, and how they're responding in different situations. Okay.
I wanted to think about what's the best way to teach teachers about trauma without getting them distracted with all the technical stuff, and what's the most important thing for them to understand and learn. And I thought that the best way to do it might be to just make a difference between a learning brain versus a brain in survival mode. So we'll just call it learning brain versus survival brain. And this is the difference. So learning brain is this brain that's open to learning new information, and it's completely okay with ambiguity and grades and vagueness, and it sees the big picture. It like pulls back and is on the balcony, it can look over the forest and figure out what's going on. On an emotional level, people in learning brain feel calm, peaceful, maybe a little excited about what they're about to learn, maybe a little playful and having fun too, and definitely curious. And they're not afraid of making mistakes because it's just part of the learning process. And so they're not really thinking about themselves. And they actually feel a little bit of confidence that if they just apply themselves, they might pick up what they're trying to learn. Now, survival brain, on the other hand, is completely different. It's hyper focused on threat. It doesn't like ambiguity. It wants clear, hard facts. It thinks in black and white terms. It doesn't want anything to be gray at all. And emotionally, you can imagine, survival brain makes people feel panicky, feel like obsessive and ready to think on. And they don't feel calm and open to learning new things. They just want to get things over with. And people in survival brain also really don't like making mistakes, and they are afraid of looking stupid too. So students in survival brain don't want to be picked on. They don't want to raise their hand and ask questions and look stupid. And so these people are also filled with doubt about their own ability to learn and stuff. They're afraid that other people can see how stupid they really are. Now, it's really important to understand how learning and survival brain interact, because survival brain always trumps learning brain. It makes sense because survival brain is just trying to save your life. And so if it thinks that there's something dangerous happening, you better pay attention to it, right? If you think that survival brain stays on longer and longer, it's hard to get out of that. It's harder to really go into learning brain. And the way I thought it, kind of like the Sisyphus. You know that guy who has to push a rock up a hill, and then every day it falls back down and he has to do it over and over again. Being in learning brain is like being up high parts of that mountain. You can see the expanse of what's going on, but it also takes a lot of work to be up there. And at any second, if you're not paying attention and putting effort into it, it's so easy to survival brain has. And that rock that Sisyphus is trying to push up, well, that's kind of like stress. And the more stressed you feel, the heavier and bigger that rock gets, and it just pushes you back into survival brain quicker. Stress is a really rigid and intense thing. And so with trauma, that makes that rock grow way bigger than it normally would. And because people with trauma misperceive ambiguous situations as threatening and stressful, that rock just stays big all the time. Is that the more you control stress, well, the easier it is to be in learning brain, right? Because that rock is a lot smaller. And what I really want to highlight for teachers is that the best way to keep students in learning brain goes back to why I spent so much time talking about attachment. Students best learn when they feel like they're safe and supported by the adults around them. A baby elephant. You know how like on those nature shows, the baby elephant is like playing with leaves or exploring a tree or something like that and having a lot of fun. And the only reason why they can do that is because there's a whole group of mama elephants around that baby, protecting it and looking out for danger. Kid survival brain is kind of like that baby elephant who doesn't have protective adults around them. They can't play and learn because they're way too focused looking out for threat and danger. So this is why I really believe that the most important thing that schools need to focus on, way more important than any kind of techniques or curricula, is really whether or not they are creating that environment where students feel like they're surrounded by these big mama elephants. We're going to protect them and watch out for them and make them safe. And when students have that, I bet you it unlocks their curiosity, their eagerness to learn, and play as a way to learn. So I hope that's helpful. Let me know if you have any questions.
All right. So we're going to do something now. This is for people at home as well. So we're going to watch the video again because I find that. No, because I tuned out halfway through that video because it was really long. All right, but what I would love, Molly, Anna, and Sarah, you don't have to bring anything, but move over to this table, please. Don't want to just remind you to, just for a moment. All right. So I'm going to get this script to be somebody's scribe. All right. If someone over this table who wants to scribe on this table. Okay, so you guys are, and you guys are, what's the other room? Survival brain. All right, I want you to jot down, and people at home listen to this as well, so perhaps Kaylee, you can be learning brain, and Jessie, you can be survival brain. All right, I want you to jot down the key things that make your brain work or not work. All right, and I also want you to look at this baby elephant analogy as well, and I want you to come up with why learning brain works in terms of attachment and why survival brain doesn't work. I know we've sort of remembered things from the video, which is great. We've remembered the things at the end of the video because it's what we've heard last. I'm going to play it again. I want you to write down some key points, okay? So if you hear a key point, I want you to ask the scribe to write it down, okay? And we'll come back at the end, okay? So we're going to start it again. I know it's a long video. He's not exactly very interesting when he talks. He's very monotone, all right? But there is some really great information in the video. So let's start off looking at learning brain.
Brain versus survival brain. And this is the difference.
So start off, what is the difference?
Is
Someone going to describe
new information, and it's completely okay with ambiguity and grades and vagueness, and it sees the big picture. It like pulls back and is on the balcony. You can look over the forest and figure out what's going on.
I don't know what happened. I know. It just stopped working.
Technical stuff. And what's the most important thing for them to understand and learn? And I thought that
All right.
this is the difference.
Okay.
So learning brain is this brain that's open to learning new information, and it's completely okay with ambiguity and grades and vagueness, and it sees the big picture and it pulls back and is on the balcony to look over the forest and figure out what's going on. On an emotional level, people at learning brain feel calm, peaceful, maybe a little excited about what they're about to learn, maybe a little playful and having fun too, and definitely curious. And they're not afraid of making mistakes because it's just part of the learning process. And they actually feel a little bit of confidence that if they just apply themselves, they might pick up what they're trying to learn. Now, survival brain, on the other hand, is completely different. It's hyper-focused on threat. It doesn't like ambiguity. It wants clear, hard facts. It thinks in black and white terms. Doesn't want anything to be gray at all. And then you can imagine that survival brain makes people feel panicky, feel like a little obsessive and afraid of getting things wrong. And they don't feel calm and open to learning new things. They just want to get things over with. Also, they don't like making mistakes, and they are afraid of looking stupid too. So students in survival brain don't want to be picked on. They don't want to raise their hand and ask questions and look stupid. And so these people are also filled with doubt about their own ability to learn stuff. And they're afraid that other people can see how stupid they really are. Now, it's really important to understand how learning brain and survival brain interact, because survival brain always trumps learning brain. And it makes sense because survival brain is just trying to save your life. And so if it thinks that there's something dangerous happening, you better pay attention to it, right? But the thing is, as survival brain stays on longer and longer, it's harder to get out of that. And it's harder to really go to learning brain. And the way I think about it is kind of like the myth of Sisyphus. You know that guy who has to push a rock up a hill, and then every day it falls back down and he has to do it over and over again. Being in learning brain is like being up on the high parts of that mountain. You can see the expanse of what's going on, but it also takes a lot of work to be up there. And at any second, if you're not paying attention and putting effort into it, it's so easy to slip back into survival brain again. And that rock that Sisyphus is trying to push up, well, that's kind of like stress. And the more stressed you feel, the heavier and bigger that rock gets, and it just pushes you back into survival brain quicker. Here's that for traumatized people, stress is a really rigid and intense thing. And so with trauma, any little stress makes that rock grow way bigger than it normally would. And because people with trauma is perceived ambiguous situations as threatening and stressful, that rock just stays big all the time. The more you control stress, well, the easier it is to be in learning brain, right? Because that rock is a lot smaller. And what I really want to highlight for teachers is that the best way to keep students in learning brain goes back to why I spent so much time talking about attachment. Students best learn when they feel like they're safe and supported by the adults around them. You know how like on those nature shows, the baby elephant is like playing with leaves or exploring a tree or something like that and having a lot of fun. And the only reason why they can do that is because there's a whole group of mama elephants around that baby protecting it and looking out for danger. The trauma who's stuck in survival brain is kind of like that baby elephant who doesn't have protective adults around them. They can't play and learn because they're way too focused looking out for threat and danger. So I really believe that the most important thing the schools need to focus on, way more important than any kind of techniques or curricula, is whether or not they are creating that environment where students feel like they're surrounded by these big mama elephants who are going to protect them and watch out for them and make them safe. And when students have that, I bet you it unlocks their curiosity, their eagerness to learn, and play as a way to learn. I hope that's helpful. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below.
Okay. So, Kaylee and Jessie, who did I say was learning brain?
Both me and Kaylee have no idea.
That's okay. I kind of spat it out anyway. So, just you two jump in before everybody else jumps in. What were some key points about learning brain from that video?
It's willing to.
And then it's willing to. You want to try again?
That it's willing to learn new information.
Yeah, it's ready for new information. Great, it's ready to learn. Jessie, what did you get for the learning brain?
It was a bit muffled on my end.
Okay, all right. Learning brain team, key points. What is the learning brain? What makes it good, etc., etc.?
It's open to learning, comfortable with ambiguity, sees the big pictures.
Yep, so nice and loud.
Feel calm, peaceful, playful, curious, not afraid to make mistakes on top of a hill.
Yep.
The more you control stress, the easier it is to be learning in the learning brain. Baby elephant.
Okay, what about the baby elephants?
You know, when they feel attached with others.
Yeah,
that's when they
has protective peers.
Okay, so the baby elephant has protected people around it, so it's more ready to learn. Okay, so the learning brain is a child that has either not experienced a traumatic event or has developed resilience from a traumatic event. Okay, is calm, playful, curious, is ready to learn, is okay to make mistakes because they probably recognise that making mistakes is learning, right? They're curious, they feel safe to play because they have adults around them that help them feel safe and comfortable. All right, Kaylee, what did you remember about the, what is it, the survival brain?
It doesn't like to take risks and stuff. Afraid.
Yeah, doesn't. Good. Doesn't like taking risks. It's afraid. Jessie, did you get anything about the survival brain from the muttered video?
I got where they were explaining like the baby elephant with the mother elephant.
Okay, and what did you get from that aspect?
The baby elephant pretty much the mother to feel safe.
Yeah, good. All right, so survival brain, what were some key points that we got from your group? Let me put this nice and loud so the girls can hear.
So,
Hello.
hyperfocus on threat, focuses on black and white terms. They don't like learning new things or making mistakes. They're promptly learning brain. It's harder to get out of the survival brain the longer you're in the survival brain. More stress puts you into the survival brain. You perceive situations as stressful. You said when you feel safe by people watching you, mainly family, you tend to do what? Whatever you said.
You tend to like just you don't feel like all timid and not wanting to do anything.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, so you guys can move back if you'd like to just sit here. But I was hoping we did that as a group. All right, so now that we have a little bit of a better understanding about the brain as a person who hasn't experienced trauma versus the brain of a child that has experienced trauma, trauma can experience a range of, I'm forgetting I can't move away from the Trauma can affect a range of different aspects of a child's life, in particular their schooling, okay? So if a child, has experienced trauma and has a survival brain, doesn't like learning new things, doesn't like having a go because they're scared to fail, they might fall behind in school, all right? They might find it really difficult to make friends because they're shy. All right, they don't want to try and make friends and be rejected because they can't handle rejection. They can't handle stressful situations. All right, so there can be a really long-term impact of a child that's experienced trauma in their life. All right, and it's hard to get out of the survival brain. All right, so they might experience it for a very long time. All right, the next video explains resilience. I was about to ask if you want to watch the video or not. Can we not go, ugh? All right. But do we understand the concept of resilience now? Do we understand what can impact a person's ability to be resilient? All right, good. That's that rock, that heavy rock. All right, that's resilience. Okay, now I know you all rolled your eyes last time I mentioned this, but it's important to talk about an example. Pardon? Children and adolescents cope with traumatic events such as natural disasters in many different ways, and responses can vary from person to person, which we now know. Children are not always able to express their feelings in the same way as adults do and may not show the same reactions. Children are generally quite resilient, and difficult feelings may resolve with the support of family and friends, which we know, all right, by having that attachment. All right, so having close relationships with family and friends, having an attachment with people helps children to be resilient, and it's important to be aware of the different responses, all right? And I was looking at the effects that a bushfires can have on children, but that was the focus our research task was going to have, but I've moved away from that, all right? We're actually just going to look at trauma. We're not going to really put a topic into it. Alrighty, so looking at that survival brain, okay, that brain that's experienced trauma, it's difficult to get out of. although there are risk factors that can impact a child's vulnerability to having a survival brain. Okay, so that's what we were talking about a little bit ago, where there are different parts of a child's life that can impact how resilient they are or how easily they can be affected by a traumatic event. So some of these things can be a pre-existing psychological issue, perhaps anxiety runs in the family, or perhaps they've experienced a traumatic event already. They might have poor family functioning. They might have low social support. All right. They may have parent mental health difficulties or post-traumatic stress disorder already. Okay. So these are some things that can impact a child's vulnerability and their resilience. All right. If they have a sense of safety or not, whether they have a predictable life. Okay. Well, social support is also paramount as well. Okay. All right, so these are some dot points of how you can help a child heal, but I'm not going to go through them because I gave you this big old document that talks about it. All right, so before I leave you off to your own devices to go through this document, because that's what you're going to do in this lesson, I just want to explain your new assessment to you, okay? So if you want to find your assessment, you go to DayMap, and it will say toddlers and trauma. Okay, and it'll look like this. All right, but I'm going to go through it here. So your assessment has 3 assessed parts. Okay, so you have a research task. Our last research task that we did was on literacy and language. So it's a very similar layout to that. Okay. All right, then you have a practical activity, and you have your first evaluation of the year. Now, I said you have 3 assessed items because you also do your student evidence sheet, okay? It's been a while since we've done these things because we have been looking at our investigation, but so just remember that it is important to take photos during a practical application. Now, last week we talked about you guys feeling like you didn't have enough time to do certain aspects of your assessment in comparison to other subjects. And I did mention that that's because of your practical application in child studies can sometimes be really time consuming. So I want to put out there that I would like to give you about 2 weeks to do the research task, but depending on how complex of a practical activity you choose to do is going to depend when you give that to me, all right? So your research task is to investigate, I haven't changed this yet, but investigate and critically analyse how a traumatic event, get rid of the bushfire bit, how a traumatic event can impact on the social and emotional development of a child. So you've only got 500 words, which is why I only want you to focus on social and emotional. But you're looking at how their ability to build relationships, all right, how their ability to respond emotionally to different situations is impacted by trauma. Okay, you can choose to focus on a certain age group if you find that more beneficial, because you have this document that looks at certain age groups. Okay, if you would like to do that, but if you want to look at it from a 0 to 8 perspective, that's absolutely fine. I'm not going to dictate which one you do. All right, so the focus, and I'll change the focus question as well, all right, because I only just made this decision yesterday. Then for your practical application, students plan and create a toy or an object to support a child's resilience through a traumatic event, all right? So the reason that I used the example of a bushfire was because you could potentially produce like a storybook to go with it that talks about a family losing their house in a fire and how that family, you know, got over that hardship, or maybe you lost a pet in a fire and you could build a story about that, or perhaps you could, whatever. All right, but it's a toy or an object that supports a child to develop resilience, okay? So you choose the age, and is the scribbling necessary right now? We're almost done. All right. So and then you do an evaluation, which I do a scaffold. So probably looking more at comfort toys. You can choose to do something for an older age if you would like to. If you'd like to focus on a younger age, you'd be leaning more towards a comfort toy or a comfort object of some sort. So while you cannot wave a magic wand and make a child's anxiety disappear, numerous products and resources are available to help find peace of mind, body and spirit. So products for the mind could be resources that comfort and quiet and distract a child from anxious thoughts. Products for the body could be resources that help manage anxious energy, meeting the child's need to move, because a lot of kids can be up and down and bouncing around, all right? So maybe you could produce an object that could help them alleviate some of that energy. Like some fidget toys, I think it was Sarah that mentioned, all right? Or spirit products and resources that help children connect to their faith or gain inner peace or comfort, all right? So some out of the blue examples that I have thought of could be a storybook. Produce a story that it could be any type of situation, and the particular character in the storybook goes through an event and they comes out in a positive way. So that is related to giving the child hope for the future, that although this really unfortunate thing has happened to them, although this really unfortunate thing has happened to this character in the storybook, it actually ends on a really positive note, and perhaps it could help that child see that, you know, not all is lost. You can produce a comfort stuffed toy, all right, that a child can carry with them. You could talk, because a lot of the soft fabrics, you know, engage the senses, it's really calming. Okay, you might even put some scent inside the toy. If you get like some, you can get little lavender beads inside of the toy and make them. You can make a comfort blanket, all right, that a child can carry around with them just to help calm them down. There's these things that the Red Cross has, they call trauma teddies, so children. Okay. Or I thought something a little bit different could be a routine checklist, something like that you would make. Okay, now the routine checklist looks quite simple and basic, so you'd be looking for ways to make it engaging for a young child. So perhaps it's like a shuffle thing and kids have to be there. To give children control back in their life, you give them the opportunity to put in order what they want to do first before bed or something like that. You could produce a routine checklist because we know that helps them feel safe and secure. Okay, so for today's, and what I did do was I gave you a list of references that I used for all of my information. I want to access that. Going back to the assessment sheet, which I'm going to modify because it doesn't have the bushfire look on it now, because bushfires at the time felt relevant, but now it doesn't feel relevant with everything that's happened. If you want to do a bushfire perspective, absolutely, but you don't have to. Okay, so your individual evaluation, I think, is 500 words as well, and I will produce a scaffold for you. Then you have to do your student evidence. So in your student evidence, you have to provide evidence of implementing safe management practices and techniques and maintenance of quality control. So what are some examples of evidence you can put in for safe management practices and techniques? Sure. How to use the sewing machine safely if that's something you choose to do. If you're using a laminator, how are you making sure you're being safe? If you're using a hot glue gun, all right? But also, in terms of safety, you would want to be looking at how your toys and objects are also safe for the young person. So, pardon? Yeah, like considering choking hazards, considering durability of a product. Are they going to be able to pull it and throw it and it not break apart instantly? All right. Is it going to have some sort of structural integrity? All right. And also looking at quality control, that's what that would fit under as well. And then also competent organisation and management of time and resources. So perhaps you take photos of a time plan that you produce for your product. Okay, so week 1, this is what I need to do. Week 2, this is what I need to do. Week 3, this is what I need to do. Yeah, okay. So, for today's lesson, although it's always very exciting to go straight into thinking about practical application, I know we all get very excited and carried away to do that, I want us to focus on just getting some research about our research task. So whether you choose to dive into this document that's on DayMat and look for things that are related to social and emotional development, all right, for trauma, those keywords, trauma and social and emotional development, I just want you to just start collating some information today. You can help narrow your 500 words down, but just like I've done in this PowerPoint, I've sort of generalized trauma. So if you want to generalize trauma in your investigation, that might be a good idea, because like we know, all different types of trauma will impact different people in different ways. So even if you were to choose an accident, like a car crash or something like that, it could still have all of those different, just trauma. You're like generalizing it is going to be a lot more simple, and you're going to get a lot of the same information anyway. Okay, so just looking back, the research question. Oh, and on your task sheet, I put a lot of bushfire stuff up, which you can probably now just get rid of. But there's some websites here as well on your task sheet if you would like to have a browse. So I don't have a scaffold up for your research task yet, and I did that intentionally because I don't want you to write it today. I just want you to start chipping away at some research about social and emotional development and keep that information in a notes page of some sort. Okay? Does everybody feel okay with that? Yes. Right. Everybody online okay with that? Kaylee and Jessie, do you have any questions about our new assessment, or in particular, maybe even the practical component if you're not going to be coming to school?
Not really.
Well, do you think you'll be able to, in 2 weeks, get started on some sort of practical?
Yeah.
Will you be still staying at school, do you think, Jessie? Still staying at home, do you think, Jessie?
Mum's thinking of making us go back to school next week, but she's not.
Okay, that's all right. Well, maybe we'll touch base in about 2 weeks and see how you go. The remainder of today's lesson, I'm going to end the Webex if you don't have any other questions. Just chip away at some research about trauma. We're not focusing on investigation feedback until next week. Okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. All right. Great. Kaylee, you're all good? Yep. Before I sign you off. Maybe she's moved away from the computer. Sorry, I'll send her an email. All right. I'm going to end, Jessie.
All right.
Thank you. Bye.
That's right. Bye.